Welcome to Nobilis Erotica, episode 313. I am your host, Nobilis Reed.
Welcome to Nobilis Erotica, the only podcast that dares to kiss and caress your pulsating flesh, torment and tease wherever it will please. Should you find crass language and adult themes unsettling, listener discretion should keep you from meddling.
This episode of Nobilis Erotica is sponsored by Circlet Press, the world's leading publisher of erotic science fiction and fantasy since 1992. Celebrate the erotic imagination with them at circlet.com. This week for our Halloween episode, I've got a lesbian ghost story titled Dear Kim by Annabeth Leong. This story originally appeared in Like a Chill Down Your Spine from Circlet Press. Annabeth Leong has written erotica of many flavors: dark, romantic, kinky, vanilla, straight, lesbian, bi, and menage. Annabeth loves shoes, stockings, cooking, and excellent basslines. She lives in Providence, Rhode Island, blogs at annabethleong.blogspot.com, and tweets as @AnnabethLeong. The story is read for us by Scout. When not reading erotica or running away from ghosts, Scout spends their days painting, writing, and pretending to be a dinosaur. You can find their poems, ramblings, and puns at thingsthatverbme.tumblr.com. And now, the story. Enjoy!
Dear Kim by Annabeth Leong, read by Scout F. Sujo. I know you never understood why I wouldn't tell you what happened over spring break. I know how weird it must seem from your perspective. I leave for my road trip promising to text or Facebook you like a good best friend. Then I drop off the face of the earth and don't respond to anything, not even when you post, "Are you dead or what?" on my wall. Then I get back, go straight to your dorm room, and tell you I want to be with you. As in, I want you to be my girlfriend. I really did not do that well. So you're mad at me. That's fair. I wish you hadn't blocked me from Instant Messenger, though. Or that you'd look at me when you pass in the quad. Or anything. I miss you. Because I miss you so much, I'm going to do the stupidest thing so far. I'm going to tell you the story. You're going to think that I'm crazy, or that I'm making it up because I think I can impress you with my literary skills. But I'm hoping you'll understand why I didn't want to tell you. That maybe we can be friends again, or have a chance at... Damn, I don't want to cry on the paper. I'm so afraid you're laughing right now. Who even sends letters these days? I don't know. I wanted to send you an object, so you can't just push delete. I'm also pretending this is a diary. I promised myself I could throw this away after I write it, or even burn it if it seems too ridiculous to send to you. And I guess I must be really desperate to try this. But whatever happens, I want you to know the truth. Of how I feel about you, of course. But also, the truth of all the rest. I think the last time we talked before this all happened was right at the beginning of break, when my car broke down an hour north of Daytona Beach. The AAA guy towed me to a mechanic, but it was the middle of the night, and I knew I'd be stuck wherever I was for at least a day. I had no idea Florida could be so miserable. Rain poured so hard I couldn't see 10 feet, but the heat still had me sticky and sweating. Mosquitoes buzzed around me like the frat boys do when I've been drinking tequila. I didn't want to bother anyone, but the first motel I walked to said American owned on this ominous-looking sign with flags up all over the place. You know the only Iranian thing about me is my name, but right then even that seemed too much. And when I called you, I guess I was freaking out in a pretty serious way. Call your mother, you said. Make her help you. That's why she's your mother. You made me grin, and I got off the phone and did what you said. I told my mom I just couldn't stay at a motel where I was sure someone would ask if I was related to Osama bin Laden. She understood and called up some old family friend who lived in De Leon Springs, which turned out to be pretty close. Jessie came to get me and take me to her house until my car got fixed. Jessie was really old. I couldn't believe she could still drive, much less in that weather. She pulled up in a gray Toronado from the 80s, cloth from the ceiling hanging down around her ears, propped up on 2 pillows to help her reach the steering wheel. "Thanks so much," I said. "Want me to take over driving?" "Yes, dear," Jessie said. She spent the whole way home telling me how she'd always been friends with colored people and always made sure to smile at the landscapers when they spoke Mexican to her. She squinted at me like she was trying to guess what I was, and I didn't want her to have the satisfaction. I had no idea Florida was so stuck in the past. It's not what you picture when you think about spring break in Daytona Beach. By then I was really wishing you and I had figured out how to take that trip to Iceland together. To get to Jessie's house, we had to drive down 3 different dirt roads, all of which had turned to rivers of muddy sand. I wish that old car really was a boat. I hadn't expected her place to be so tiny. The little house looked ready to float away. The paint had peeled down to the bare wood, and the left side of the front porch had crumpled so much we had to duck to get through the door. I kept glancing at the ceiling, though I doubted I had time to save myself if it did start to fall. "I can sleep on the sofa or wherever," I said. Jessie had already been up for over an hour in that weather, and I don't want the old lady to give up her bedroom, too. She coughed a little. "I have a little guest room. Used to be my room when I was your age." She led me to a door, undid 4 bolts, and peered inside. "I think you'll be okay in there." Does it have a leak in the ceiling or something? I don't want to be rude, but the way she kept the room fastened made me uneasy. Jessie didn't seem to hear me, so I picked up my bag and followed her in. Now, this is the first crazy thing I have to tell you, Kim, and I hope you will keep an open mind. It smelled pungent in there, like someone fucked in that room all night long, kept going through the hottest part of the day. Maybe it just stumbled out a minute before we went in. The old lady smelled it too. Her nose wrinkled up, and she hesitated on the threshold. "Does somebody else live with you?" I wonder if maybe she had a slutty relative who got off on getting laid at Grandma's house. I checked Jessie out, too. Wouldn't want to underestimate an old lady. But I figured if she had that much action, she would at least appear a little flushed. She huffed. "Don't you start this," she said. I don't know what to say. I was doing my best not to be rude, and I just wanted to go to bed, wake up, get my car fixed, and get out of there. I feel like she wasn't really talking to me. Sometimes with old people, you can't tell. I put my bag down in the corner, and Jessie walked to the bed and turned down the sheets. It took a minute for me to notice she'd frozen. "You okay?" I went over and touched her shoulder. She was shaking hard, like maybe some kind of seizure. "Jessie?" I asked. I touched her cheek, which had gone cold. Her jaw hung slack. She just stared at the bed. Taking a deep breath, I followed her gaze. "If I rush for your sister's frat and have to go through 7 orgies to get in, I'd never expect to see a set of sheets as completely ruined by sex as those were. Thick white fluid gummed up almost every inch of them." Jessie had a scared, blinking face of an Alzheimer's patient. I thought she had to have momentarily forgotten about a drug addict relative. I patted her arm. I'm a big girl, and I know people have sex. I don't want her to be frightened or embarrassed. "I'll take care of it," I said. "Just show me where you keep the clean sheets. Don't worry, this is not a big deal at all." Jessie shuffled to the linen closet with me in tow. She seemed even older, bent double as she walked. I took a clean set of faded yellow sheets and went back to the room. Before I did anything to the bed, I closed and locked everything I could, hoping I'd at least hear the weird relative that decided to come back. I tried to hold my breath as I rolled the sheets into a ball, but something tickled the back of my leg. I gasped and caught a big whiff. I guess I have to admit it turned me on. In fact, it reminded me of something very specific. Kim, I don't want you to think I'm trying to trick you into getting horny, but I have to describe this. It matters in the context of what happened later. Anyway, what I smelled in the sheets all came from a woman. I've done some things and smelled some things, and none of that fluid smelled like what comes out of a guy. It might seem like you couldn't get so much wet stuff without a guy, but when I caught that scent, it made me think about this time I'd been reading a bunch of stories online about fisting, and I tried to do it to myself. I poured lube all over my hand and wrapped my ankles around the back of my head. Thank you, yoga. I managed to work my fingers and thumb inside myself after maneuvering for a long time. But I couldn't get my hand in past my knuckles. I rubbed my clit like a mad woman and pushed as hard as I could, but I made no progress actually fisting myself. I would never tell you that, Kim, except that when I gave up and pulled out my hand, I was covered in stuff I'd never seen come out of me before, thicker and saltier. Just seeing it got me excited. I figured you had to be getting it really deep and good for that to come out of you. Like maybe a bunch more would come if someone fisted me for real. But I'm sure that same stuff was on the sheets, every inch of them. I don't know what it would take to get that much from someone, but I have to say I'd like to find out. I had to drop those sheets and back away. My face had gotten way too close to the bundle, and my fingers had started playing with the waistband of my pants. I squirmed a little, my clothes feeling too tight. I couldn't resist touching the stuff with my fingertip and smelling it again. I got a weird shiver up my spine. Until that moment, I couldn't imagine doing anything more than throwing sheets like that in the laundry, but now I had all kinds of ideas, like putting them back in the bed, taking off my clothes and lying down on them, rubbing those juices all over me, bathing myself in another woman's arousal. The word ghost had not yet crossed my mind, but I knew something wasn't right. I grabbed the bundle of sheets, found the old lady's laundry room, and threw them in the washer. When I got back to the guest room, I was panting. From exertion and nervousness, yes, but also from the way that smell made me feel. I put the new sheets on slowly, trying to get control of myself, then lay down and managed to go to sleep. I may have had to do a few things first, but I will spare you those descriptions, because there are other things coming up that I really will have to explain in detail, even though they're pretty personal. In the morning, I called a mechanic and found out the repair wouldn't be too expensive, but I needed to order a part, so I wouldn't have my car for another 3 days. I could have looked for a bus to Daytona or asked to borrow Jesse's car, but I was kind of in a weird mood. I kept thinking about you, wondering why we hadn't wound up having spring break together. When I got the idea to drive to Daytona alone, I thought it would be empowering. But now all I could picture were big groups of drunk guys asking me to show them my tits. I don't want to be there alone while everyone else partied. Jessie made bacon and eggs for me and asked how things were going, and offered to let me stay with her in Leong Springs until the car was done. I thought about how I'd already saved a bunch of money not paying for a motel or breakfast, and the car breaking down seemed like a blessing in disguise. Is there anything to do around here? Like, can you visit the actual Leong Springs? Jessie's face turned stony, and I felt guilty. I didn't mean to insult her or make it sound like she lived in a boring place. I tried to apologize, but none of the things she said in response made sense. She kept asking me who told me to go there. I didn't talk to anyone but her and the mechanic, but she wouldn't believe me. She told you, didn't she? Jessie said. She talked to you, didn't she? I hope this drug addict relative wasn't dangerous or anything. I figured she must stay at the house pretty often, whoever she was. I said again that I hadn't seen anyone. Jessie must have finally realized how crazy she sounded. She stopped talking, rubbed her napkin over her face, and turned back to me with a contrived hostess smile that still made me feel more comfortable. I'm sure you'll love the springs, dear. There are hiking trails and a pancake house, and they've built over the actual spring, so it's all like a swimming pool. Just be careful. It goes down very deep. Jessie explained how I could walk there, and that sounded kind of fun. I put my bathing suit on under my clothes and filled my water bottle. She packed me peanut butter and banana sandwiches and sent me off. I felt like a little kid having an adventure, and I was glad I hadn't made it to Daytona yet. The sun had come out. I slogged through heat and mud, feeling pretty good. I wondered if you were having a good time, whatever you were doing, but I hadn't brought my phone with me on my walk, and Jessie didn't have Wi-Fi in our house, so I hadn't been online. I got to the springs, and it was awesome. I figured I could spend all spring break there if I wanted to, and Jessie didn't mind. I hiked and did nothing and felt like I had traveled to another world entirely. In the afternoon, I finally made my way to the water. People went scuba diving there. I watched them put on their gear and dive down and disappear. Even the brightness of day gave me a shiver thinking of that cold water running down far below the cheery swimming pool where kids played with inflatable swim toys. I peeled off my outer clothes and got in the water. At first I stayed near the kids, liking the knowledge of concrete below me. But the depth of the spring made itself known even there. The water ran colder than it should have under that powerfully hot sun. Before long, I swam to the deeper end, clinging to the side of the pool and peering down, hoping for a glimpse of the divers. Something trailed down my leg. I shook myself, thinking I'd gotten wrapped in a water plant. A moment later, the same touch teased down my left leg. Tease is the right word, too. Whatever it was stroked down my skin, sometimes clear and sometimes barely there. I thought of the party where we met, where you ran an ice cube down my spine, and how when I turned around you laughed and laughed. I yelled, but you grinned through it all, and the next day we were friends. I shouldn't distract myself from the story with that, though. I reached down to dislodge the plant and didn't feel anything. I decided it must have floated away. Before I could forget the whole thing, the touch returned to my right leg, where it ended by grasping my ankle with unmistakable fingers and giving me a tug. I jumped a mile and looked down into the water. That was the first time I saw her. Pale, pale, pale girl. Short red hair hailed around her face and wide green eyes so pure the water didn't fade their color. A little nose and big ears and friendly high cheekbones. Her bathing suit was the first clue something was wrong. She wore a little red 1950s number, more like a mini dress than a suit. It could have been retro, but there's also her expression. She grinned like she had a secret, but tugged my leg like her life depended on it. I screamed a little and dipped under to grab her, but couldn't feel anything where she ought to have been. I've never been good at keeping my eyes open underwater, so I surfaced to look for her again. Nothing. I swallowed. They had a lifeguard near the pool. He was even looking at me. Should have gone to get him, I guess, in case she was a real living girl. But I had a bad feeling and didn't want to spend the day getting lectured about how I shouldn't make up stories that required people to launch needless search and rescue missions. I got out of the water fast, found my clothes, and headed for Jessie's place. Maybe Daytona Beach sounded better to me right then, and maybe it sounded worse. I was pretty sure I'd seen a ghost, but I liked the way she touched me. I liked her eyes. Now, Kim, I don't want you to get jealous when I talk about this. Please know I'm telling the truth when I mention the times she reminded me of you. I even think I might have liked her because of you. You and I had a few encounters we never talked about. Maybe that was my fault. Something about that ghost brought those memories to the front of my mind. The whole walk back, for example, I thought about the Halloween party we went to last year, where you helped me dress in some guy's vest, tie, and hat. On the way out of the dorm, I gave you my arm like an old-fashioned gentleman and felt so proud when you took it. The fake blood on your prom dress must have killed the effect a bit, but you smiled and glanced at me sideways, and I thought at that time I was excited to be in college, but walking down the Florida dirt road months later, I wasn't so sure. I thought about texting you when I got back to the house, but didn't know what to say. I guess that was the real beginning of my disappearing on you, and I wish I could just go back and tell myself just put hi, so you knew I was thinking of you. Always. I read for a while, had coffee with Jessie, and pictured myself spending all a break in that sleepy routine. It got dark faster than I expected. I went to bed heart-pounding when I opened the door to that room. If I expected a repeat of yesterday's scene, I was in for some disappointment. It smelled like me. The bedsheets remained crumpled exactly the way I'd left them. I turned out the light and fell asleep quickly. Sun makes you tired. But the ghost hadn't had enough of me yet. I woke up a few hours later, cold. My feet had gotten out from under the blankets, and I wanted to pull them back in, but couldn't quite summon the will to do it. You know how it is when you're mostly asleep. You want to do something and you lie there thinking about it and half dreaming, but you don't quite get around to actually doing whatever it is. I dozed that way for a while. Maybe you'll think this next part was a dream, but I don't think it was. A finger caressed my calf. I recognized the touch from earlier that day. It didn't stop at the knee. A hand pushed the blanket up to my waist, and the fingertip continued its journey up my inner thigh. I wanted it to keep going, all the way to my panties and then some, but it moved so slowly, I didn't dare to respond. I don't want to scare off the person behind the fingertip. As I lay there being carefully touched, I remember Thanksgiving when I went with you to your parents' house and we shared your bed because the house was so full of relatives. Sometime that night, I felt the heat of your arms so close to me that the hairs on your forearm tickled the back of my hand. You shifted so slowly and patiently that I didn't believe you were asleep. You touched the back of my hand with your thumb. Thought I would never breathe again. I lay still and waited. Maybe I was turned on, but at the time I was just aware of curiosity. I wanted to know what you were up to. But you didn't move, just pressed your thumb against my hand until I had to speak up or fall asleep, and in the morning I convinced myself you must have done it in your sleep. The fingertip climbed my inner thigh, and I suddenly understood like it had hit me in the head. You meant something when you touched me in the middle of the night. I should have told you I was awake, and that it was okay. The fingertip stopped moving, and a tongue touched my knee instead. The wet warmth of it followed the trail blazed up by that finger, easing its way up my leg and toward my dampening panties. A few inches from my crotch, the tongue slowed even further and flicked against my skin in time with my heartbeat. I moaned and opened my eyes, needing to pull her close. The room was empty. I waited and watched in the dark for a long time, but the spirit did not return. In the morning, I woke to the sound of laughter in the bathroom. Splashing. 2 voices. One hitched and the quality of the noises changed. The sounds that carried to my ears became wetter, more secretive. I heard a gasp, then a groan, and then a giggle. My thighs still tingled where the tongue had been, and I pictured the same tongue at work in the bathtub. Desperate splashing and sighing seemed to confirm my suspicions. I lay in bed trying to decide what I thought was going on. The drug addict relative didn't seem likely at this point. I felt pretty certain of what I'd experienced the night before and at the Springs. Was I really going to casually accept the idea that a ghost had come all over Jessie's sheets, then followed me to the Springs, then teased me in bed the night before? The back of my neck crept a little, but I wasn't exactly afraid. In the other room, the sounds continued. Water moved rhythmically. I pictured fingers, maybe even a fist plunging in and out between someone's spread legs. I had to go to the bathroom, so I put on my bathrobe, got up, and knocked. Getting no reply, eased the door open to find, yet again, no human occupants. The bathtub, however, sat full of water and bath salt, still warm to the touch. I could smell her in there, filling the room with sex like she'd done in the bedroom my first night in the house. Thought about getting in the water and closing my eyes to see if she would touch me some more, but that felt a little too crazy. I left the room and closed the door. Pressing my ear against it, I heard the moan start up again. Ghost it was, I decided. As soon as I filled with certainty, fear crashed down on me. I ran from the door and into the kitchen, where Jessie stirred sausage gravy. I sat at the table panting. The ghost didn't seem to mean me any harm. From that corridor, I had nothing to worry about except maybe an orgasm. Still, I felt a sense of dread. I wonder why the ghost always made me think of you. I hoped it was an evil premonition of some kind. I pried at my own brain, trying to figure out what you and the ghost had to do with each other, until Jessie sat down across from me and asked me what was wrong. I hesitated. She had framed needlepoint all over her kitchen and a hibiscus flower on the table. The sun streamed in strong and confident. It felt ridiculous to talk about ghosts. Jessie, I said finally, why are there all those bolts on the door to the room I've been sleeping in? The old lady's face got unnaturally smooth. If you don't know, child, it's probably best not to ask. I gathered as much courage as I could. Who is she? She'd be quick to accuse me the day before, but today Jessie pretended not to know what I meant. The girl with the red hair, I said. Nola, Jessie sighed, in the tone reserved for martyred saints and screen scars from the Golden Age. Was that her name? Her lower lip trembled. She looked away. You leave Nola alone. Well, I don't know if I can, I said. She's not exactly leaving me alone. What do you know about her? Jessie turned her back and went to the stove. When will they be done with your car? I'm sure you want to go to Daytona soon. That meant we were done talking. We ate breakfast silently. I took her peanut butter and banana sandwiches, and I spent the day wandering around De Leon Springs. I checked out an old junk store and had lunch at a really authentic Mexican restaurant. I dialed your number about 100 times, but didn't push the call button. I acted like I needed to figure something out about you, but was probably just trying to deny what I already knew. I got home late. Jessie seemed grouchy. When I went to the guest room, I saw she'd been in there, moved some things around, maybe even gone through my bag. I didn't want to confront her. I'd be leaving the next day anyway. I shut myself in the room and got a book to read. I couldn't concentrate. The room felt too hot. Mosquitoes buzzed at the screens trying to get in. Something tapped the window. I glanced up and there she was. Head cocked to one side, eyes squinting like she couldn't quite see me through the screen. My lungs went cold. Hello? I said. She tapped again like she hadn't heard me. Like I said, I didn't think she wanted to hurt me. I got up and opened the window. Of course, as soon as I did, I couldn't see her anymore. I sighed and lay back down in bed. You told me about the humidity before I left for Florida, but I don't think I understood it until right then how bad it is. I felt like I weighed twice as much, and sweating didn't cool me down at all. It just made me feel nasty. I decided to take off my clothes. And in case you ask, maybe I was trying to get the ghost's attention. I felt lonely and sad and confused. Maybe they were the ghost's feelings, and maybe they were mine. After I got naked, I dozed off in the heat. Fingers on my inner thigh, both sides this time. I didn't want to open my eyes. I didn't want her to go away again. She applied gentle pressure, and I spread my legs for her. Her lips against my skin, warmer than I expected them to be. Her teeth sharp and tender. She nibbled me from knee to crotch. I kept my eyes closed, reached down and found her head, her soft hair. I stroked it, and slowly she made her way to my pussy. She moved like she had had all the time in the world, and I guess maybe she did. She teased my lips apart with her tongue, never fierce or demanding. My body opened for her at the same time, blooming under her kisses. I wanted her to make me come. Desire pounded at my stomach harder than I could ever recall. Her tongue darted out, sliding easily between my folds, considering how wet I'd gotten, but still feeling rough. The word ghost sounds insubstantial, but now I found her substantial enough. I gripped the back of her head and ground against her face, felt her grin, her cheeks rounding against my thighs. She looked faster. I started to make noise. I should have known to hold things down for the old woman, but nothing in the situation was rational by that point, so I wasn't really thinking that way. No one has ever licked me that way before. Her tongue made circles around my clit but swiped it directly ever so often. The after that single burning swipe would buzz in my clit, prolonged by other taps and movements. She seemed to know right when I wore off, renewing the sensation until I ached all over with a desire to come. You might be wondering why I'm telling you all these details. I want you to know what really happened, Kim. It's not just that a ghost ate me out, it's that a ghost slipped a finger inside of me while sucking on my clit. She did things I'd never thought of, like kneeling to the side of me on the bed and kissing me between the legs until I mewed little kitten noises, then making her fingers into a hook shape and reaching into me and pushing up until tears started in the corner of my eyes. This was real, and yes, I'm sure she was a ghost. Getting to that part. By now, I felt the bed getting sticky under me. I thought of those sheets from the first night. The ghost had all 4 fingers inside of me, and I thought that 6 salty cum might be pouring out into her hand right then. Her thumb played near my entrance. I wasn't sure it could all fit, but I wanted it to. She licked me hard and fast as to coax me open, but I didn't think I could open any more for anyone ever. The thumb started to move, pressing into me along with the rest of her hand, and I completely forgot where I was and screamed. She kept going. She wriggled her fingers into position, sucked my clit, and pushed. I thought she would split me open. I sobbed and gasped and came, and I swear that right then I said your name. A couple other things happened at that moment. The door burst open. Jessie screamed. I snapped up to a sitting position. The ghost disappeared. Jessie and I stared at each other across the space where the ghost had been, and she didn't say anything, but I read it all in her face. Jealousy, despair, love, and most of all, loss. She left the room, and it was a long time before I felt ready to move. I ached inside both heart and body. When I could, I washed up and went to her. We talked for most of the night, and I don't know how to write it all in a sensible way. Jessie and Nola were lovers, it turns out, back in the 50s when that pretty much wasn't okay. Jessie worried about it and tried to be discreet, but Nola wasn't that kind of girl. She was free and happy and didn't want to hide how she felt about Jessie. Jessie didn't want to end up alone. She wanted a family. She said she couldn't understand what Nola meant when she said they could be together, the two of them. You were supposed to have kids. You're supposed to have a man. She couldn't envision anything else. She got engaged to a local boy, his name was Jim, and told Nola they could still have fun together, but they also had to grow up and move on. Nola didn't like it, but I guess everything kept going that way until one day something happened at Jessie's house, in the room where she had me sleeping. Nola had come over. They were making out. Jessie said she was very naive about her body and how to feel pleasure with it. She didn't know how Nola came up with a lot of the things she tried. Things were getting intense. She and Nola took off all their clothes. And Nola said she wanted to put her whole hand inside Jessie. The idea didn't make much sense to Jessie, but the way Nola started to do it felt so amazing that she didn't ask questions. Jessie said it hurt more than anything she'd experienced at that point, but every bit of pain seemed to multiply by 2 and turn into pleasure. She lay on the bed sobbing while Nola slid fingers into her and licked her, and she'd never been so happy in her life. Unfortunately, Jim decided to visit Jessie that day. No one answered when he knocked, but he heard screaming and sobbing coming from inside the house and decided to go in to see if Jessie was okay. You can imagine how he reacted when he saw Nola kneeling between Jessie's leg with her forearm disappearing into Jessie's cunt. They all had a huge fight, which sounds like the most awkward thing in the world. By the end of it, Jim had broken off the engagement, and Jessie had told Nola she hated her. That's when the tragedy happened. Nola came back later that night and knocked on Jessie's window, calling her name and asking to talk to her. Jessie was so angry she lay in bed and ignored it, though she said she did wonder why Nola was wearing a bathing suit. The next day, she found out that Nola had drowned herself in the springs. I had no idea until Jessie told me the story how disturbing it is to see an old woman cry inconsolably. They don't have time left for things to work out okay, so you can't say anything to them. Everything is as horrible as she thinks it is. Nola is gone, and she really has lost her chance at love forever. I'm sorry for her. I hugged her and rocked her like I would a baby. She told me she was jealous that Nola had visited me and not her, but she couldn't blame me. She said she used to see Nola's ghost all the time, but less and less now that she looks less and less like she did when she was young. I left in the morning and went to Daytona Beach because I didn't know what to do if I stayed with Jessie. I felt bad about leaving her in her grief, but I truly didn't know any way to help her. I didn't do any partying in Daytona. Just lay on the beach and thought about it all. And Kim, I thought about you. I kept wondering why I said your name at the moment I did, and then I knew I didn't need to wonder. I was scared of how I felt about you, so I became your friend, but I knew the moment you touched me with the ice cube what I really wanted. It seemed to me that you felt the same. I thought of all those hours we spent at the diner with our faces so close I could have kissed you without moving. I thought of how we'd lie in bed together to study. I thought of how you never went on any dates and I didn't either. But I won't be satisfied just being friends. Nola's ghost showed me how much more I need. Remember your thumb against my hand, or any time your skin has touched mine? I know how hot we could be together. These days we don't have to be afraid, not like Jessie and Nola were. We can be together. I don't want to turn this too dramatic. I hope we won't have any tragedies that could compare to what happened to them. Being in the house made me realize who and what I am, and now I know how I feel about you. I don't want to hide. I'm sorry I was so clumsy. All of this felt too important to tell you by text message, and then when I could tell you in person, I thought you wouldn't believe me, and the next minute I thought you might be mad at me and jealous of a ghost. After all the things that had happened between us, I got sort of foolish and overconfident, expecting you to just fall into my arms like in a movie. Maybe I've messed this all up too much, and it's too late to work out. I hope if that's the case that I have other chances, that I won't end up sad and alone like Jessie. But seriously, Kim, I'll be on I Am all night.
And there you have it. Was it good for you? Tell me what you think by calling the voicemail line, sending me an email, or finding me on Twitter. All those ways to contact me can be found over at the podcast website at nobilis.libsyn.com. If you like Dear Kim, you can get a whole anthology of stories just as awesome at smashwords.com. Use the coupon code AY44X to get 50% off, like a chill down your spine. You have been listening to the Nobilis Erotica podcast. Theme music is Cold Funk by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. Incidental music was from Ghosts by 9 Inch Nails, used under its Creative Commons license. This podcast is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license. Until next time, listen hard.